Good morning, everyone. 8 o'clock, we can get started. We have the agenda before us. I was asking about the city rules, whether we should have a motion for approval on. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? If none, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved. Or second.
We have a motion by,
I yield to the mayor.
all right. You get to figure it out when you're taking notes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Good morning, Carrie. We'll pause for just a few seconds and let you get settled. We just approved the agenda, was all. Okay. And in our packets, we had the minutes from our September 25th meeting. Any changes, additions, corrections? If none, do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Also in our packet, we had the plan update. Thank you very much for all the work that went into that. There was a lot of information. I don't think anybody memorized it, but Nicole and your staff, thank you very much. And we'll
Thanks.
turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Chair Mathern and the rest of the board. I will say the staff has, Megan and Kylie, have worked diligently and methodically over the last 4 months to kind of coordinate this plan update. Copied a lot of the same practices that you conducted 5 years ago with the plan update in terms of the public open house, a mass mailing to property owners within the boundary. And then we also brought on a little unique, this time we brought on KLJ to assist us a little bit. Joe Nigg, as you might know, works part-time over there when he's not farming. And so we took advantage of that knowledge base over there as well. And then, as you know, we had the workshop last month, and the goal today would be, if you're ready, I'll walk you through the plan a little bit, and if you're ready, some commentary, discussion, and if you're ready to adopt the plan, that would be fantastic. We certainly understand we presented a lot of information to you within a very short timeline, and so if you're not ready to act and have comments, we can coordinate a calendar as part of the discussion on updates.
I think given the timeline you laid out, it would be best for our committee to approve it today if we can, if everyone's
That would be our
comfortable
hope.
with it.
We do have meetings set up for the Cass County School District, the Cass County Board Commission, as well as the school district for seeking those letters of support. But we have built in a timeline that if we need to do some things. New this year, we also did some one-on-one interviews with recent applicants on the Renaissance Zone to just kind of do a little bit of, I would say, an audit light, to learn a little bit on how they found the process, how they found the staff engagement, how they were able to navigate, especially first-time applicants, how they're able to navigate that process. And so I'll also talk a little bit about some next steps beyond just the plan, but some work items that we plan to conduct once the plan's approved into 2020. So what we heard from your input at the workshop last month is we had an affirmation of our current vision. We updated some recent case studies, and then we did connect the goals to the Downtown INFOCUS plan, so we're really excited about that as we start to implement the Downtown INFOCUS plan with a little bit more clarity. And then we heard general support on some boundary updates, pretty minor in detail, and then I'll talk a little bit about some 2020 goals that we heard in terms of kind of branding materials, marketing materials, as we kind of talk about navigating that process. In terms of what's in front of you today, is what came in your packet is a kind of just a plain Word document, and then what was laid down in front of you today is the same document with a little graphic splash, I would call it. And so this is again, a little bit in draft comment, draft status in terms of that, but we do, again, if you do have some edits, we're more than glad to incorporate those into the plan itself. Let's see. One of the other things that I'll talk through is we reformatted the development objectives a little bit, kind of just rearranged those so we can talk about the scoring in a little bit different methodology. And then we saw some redundancies. You know, if you think about where the Renaissance Zone and the advocacy of that was 20 years ago versus today, you know, some of that languaging was a little dated, and I think it's, for us at least, it's less about kind of selling the Renaissance Zone plan. It's more about presenting the evidence on its successes and how we want to continue that legacy. So in general, I'll just dive right into the zone boundary. And I should say I have about a 10-minute presentation, so just to kind of back that up in case you get a little tired up there. So in terms of with the zone boundary update, we largely stayed with the surrounding kind of exterior boundary, and then we recounted our half blocks. And so with some of that land transactions that's happened over the years, if there's a public entity on that block, it counts as a half block instead. But knowing that if we were to add that back, you know, say the city sells that property then to a private developer, that would turn into back to a full block. So we need to be a little careful with that math, but basically the maps with the purple hatching is what we counted as a half block. And then we also suggest that we hold 2 in reserve. And so we suggested that we add block 57 back into the plan. That's along Main Avenue, and that's in a blue hatch on the map. And basically that through some initial discussions with developers downtown and with the downtown INFOCUS, kind of focusing on the Main Avenue with the reconstruction of Main Avenue, we see that really eligible for interest of sale with very soon. And so we, since that block's a little different, and since it used to be in the plan, we took it out of the plan, and now we want to add it back in. We should do it as part of the 5-year plan update that presents a little bit more cohesive vision to the state. We have to advocate to the state why we want to add this block back in. And so we think we have a good case for that with, again, with what I just mentioned. But so we would suggest we add that now as part of this plan update, as opposed to maybe wait somewhere between the next 4 years. So that leaves us basically by redoing the half blocks and adding that blue block back in, block 57, and removing the Woodrow Wilson block, which was is completed. That leaves us a total of I don't ever remember the math offhand, but basically 47 with the 2. So we have 49 granted by legislation that we can apply. So this map, you'll remember this map from the workshop where we talked a little bit about, I changed it to letters instead of numbers so we can talk about it a little bit. But we know the orange area in A1 and A2, we know there's some movement happening there with some land acquisitions, et cetera. Our suggestion is to, as we kick off the core neighborhood plan, we would include those exterior boundaries, you know, kind of that transition between downtown and the neighborhoods as part of that core neighborhood master planning. And then likewise with C2 down on the southern edge, that's really going to be in that transition as well. And as we go into the core neighborhood planning, we, just as a small update on the core neighborhood plan, we did have interviews 2 weeks ago with 3 finalists. And we hope to have a scope of work established by the end of the year and a contract approved by the City Commission by the end of the year. We're really excited about kind of doing a comprehensive plan update for our core neighborhood plan, our core neighborhoods, which is similar to the downtown INFOCUS plan, where we really look about the comprehensively what the impacts are to some of those older neighborhoods. We do predict a land use plan coming out of that process, so as that transition area. Let's see, and then, so I kind of talked about our strategy that we approached for this plan update. I call it block math because it gets a little goofy when you start talking about it from memory, but we started out, 51 blocks of discussion. We removed the Woodrow Wilson, and then the half blocks, so 50 minus 4 equals 46, add in the C1, which is that Main Avenue lot, back to 47, and then leave 2 blocks in reserve. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on the boundaries, or we'd like to discuss that, or if you followed along my explanation, okay.
Madam Chair. Thank you. Are we confident the remaining blocks and the additional block, I guess the additional blocks sort of by default, but the remaining blocks will be utilized in the coming years?
I believe so. I think we had, maybe I'll ask Kylie. Kylie received the letters, and there's quite a few people that have projects in the work, in the scope, and but they may not be ready like today. And so I believe there's enough activity downtown as part of that.
Okay, and the follow-up question is, has anyone else contacted you outside this map? I actually got, within a day, a text from someone I know, but did anyone else, well, I don't even know if he contacted you, but did anyone else contact you regarding this that owns property on the adjacent periphery of these downtown blocks?
Yes, we did receive one letter from the owner of, I think it's Mom's Diner, and he was stating that possibly within the next 5 years they would have a project that they would like to bring into the Renaissance Zone. So that's on University and Main Avenue.
No one else, huh?
No, that's the only other one I've heard from that isn't in this boundary.
And I would say Dave Noah, who owns Block C2, has advocated to come back in at this point as well, and we're suggesting that we hold until he has that project really evidently ready to go.
Madam Chair, so the other thing is, so 56 is a maybe you can talk a little bit about that, but when you talk about this on University, we do have the opportunity to have separate blocks that aren't contiguous to the, so that would be a possibility at some point. If 56 ever gets done, then you can move that, or you can have a, I don't know what you would call it, an island or something
Yep.
like that. And so that would be a possibility. But I think what Chad's point is, it's also very important to have 2 extra, because that gives us flexibility if something comes up. Otherwise, it takes a little bit longer. So I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so as a satellite block, we have this, we just, let's get my mouse going. So this kind of corner area over in Oak Grove, adjacent to downtown, that block 55 is, that block is you just designated that as a satellite block. And once that we do see a lot of activity on that project, the entitlement's finishing up. And so as soon as that project initiates, and we'll work with the state to see how early we can remove that from the block, and then you'd have a free satellite block to assign. So maybe a little bit about, I know we don't necessarily need to advocate about the tax benefits to you as a board, but we did hear a lot of comments from you about how do we, kind of package that up into, I would say, advocacy materials or communication materials. And, kind of just a little tag in the plan, we do talk about 81 projects of the, I believe it's 252 projects, have actually been reinvestments of like new construction and rehab, so significant investment in downtown. And the boundary of the 1999 Renaissance Zone, had an approximate value of 197 million. And then today's boundary, so we have these updated figures working with our assessment office, has a value of 546 million. And so just as a, kind of placeholder, that's our initial data. We do know as an activity that we, as staff, would like to do is working with Jim Gilmore and some of our other data management team, parcel data management team, is actually trace the parcels. So the parcels evolve, you know, and they change in those boundaries, and so we need to kind of do some deep dive into our data to kind of talk about the direct impact of each individual project. And so so that's a work plan item for us to coming up. But we do know when we compare the boundaries what that assessment value is. Connecting into the the Go 2030 plan and the Downtown INFOCUS plan, and we did bring those into the block spreadsheet. So in your plan itself, in the kind of graphic one, you'll see probably the most important component that the state cares about is this spreadsheet that's in the very back few pages. And what that does is identify a block by block value assessment, indicates a little narrative of our existing buildings and land uses, talks about our desired land uses. We have a column in there, if we designate it to half block, talk about the zoning district. And the very far right side, we have a new column that talks about the Downtown INFOCUS future land use. And so this chart is really important as we talk to future landowners or future project interests as we start to navigate towards that vision that this plan talks to, as well as the Downtown INFOCUS plan talks to. In the plan itself, I will just say, let me get a page number here for you. In the plan itself, on page 8 on the graphic plan, we talk about the Renaissance Zone plan's goals. In the past, on the right-hand column of the slide, you'll see 15 goals that talk about, these are familiar to you. We score we kind of score against these every application that comes in. And the Downtown INFOCUS goals on the left, grow as a neighborhood, prosper as a business center. We see that as a little bit of a consolidation, if you will. And so we did a little exercise as staff to see, do we have all 15 goals covered through the same verbiage that we use in the Downtown INFOCUS plan? And the answer is yes. And so what we decided as a staff is to update the plan to advocate for these 7 goals. It's a little simpler to think about these 7 goals, but know that these 15, I would say, components of these 7 goals are also important. But in terms of just organization and the narrative of the plan, that again helps us tie our strategies together. And I'll pause there if there's any questions. Obviously, from day one of the Renaissance Zone plan and strategy, we want to focus on economic development. And so, again, we just did a little graphic cleanup to talk about economic development as it relates to high priority land uses, targeted areas, and investment. So those connect back to the blocks in that chart. And then street activation and historic preservation was in the plan, and we just kind of grouped it together to talk about, we put it as a subcategory as urban design. And so if we go back to, it gets a little confusing, but we had some discussion with Joe Nigg on this too. As we look on the 15 components, how many of them are design related or streetscape related, to kind of generate that, it's a common, kind of, I guess, belief by those in economic development and planning that, when you invest in your framework of downtown and your streets and your trees and, storefronts, et cetera, that generates, kind of urban design components. And so we just kind of brought that into the plan to kind of synergize that a little bit. What we'd like to talk to you about as we go into the scoring and, kind of that staff report process is we use these as our, kind of value categories as opposed to those 15 goals. And so if we talk about the score, and so we expect that to be a future conversation with you. We don't necessarily need to decide that for the plan update itself, but we want to start talking about how we use these in a more kind of maybe transparent way in a direct way. So that kind of summarizes the plan itself. I would just kind of connect you back real quick to the graphic plan where we did update our showcase projects on the first page of the graphic plan, and we highlight the Roberts Commons, the Loretta Building, as well as, which that's not the right picture for the Loretta Building, so we'll fix that. And then the Ruby Rules, which is the new dental office in the old Chamber Building and yoga studio. So we highlight that, and as part of our case study interviews, we interviewed Kevin Hall and Mike Kelly, who's building the condo development just to the north, as well as participated in with Side Street and Renaissance Zone activities there, as well as the owner of Ruby Rules and the owners of Kilbourne, of course, since they have so many applications. This is the expected timeline that we plan to proceed, which is kind of connecting with the Cass County Commission on November 4th, and then we're presenting to the school district's planning committee. We're not going to the full board, but their planning committee on November 15th. And then we hope to bring this to City Commission for action on November 18th. We did touch base with the Tax Exempt Review Committee yesterday just to kind of let them know where we're at in the status, and then hope to have that MOU crafted and everything submitted to the state by early December. And so that's our hopes on getting the plan update completed.
Madam Chair, can I ask for one favor? Could you have, like when you talk about going to the Cass County Commission, I think it'd be interesting to show, here's how the Renaissance Zone, those numbers that you showed for downtown, but to show how that affected the city commission or the county commission, their budget, if that's possible, and to break it down for school district too, just to show. I think it'd be it would be interesting. And I know you enjoy having people give you more work to do, but
For the numbers people. Okay.
No, absolutely. We can do that.
Madam Chair,
Carrie.
just for one very minor, a typo I noticed on page 1 of the one with pictures in the plan update, and actually it's in both. Under the Loretta building, the building value was approximately $600,000. I think there's a.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we just got the graphic version yesterday, so we'll be doing some reviews on that. And we can certainly send you a fresh copy once we get the final edits.
Any other comments or questions of?
I can talk a little bit of what else we heard from you and that we would like to talk about in terms of 2020 work items with you. We very much value the involvement of the Renaissance Zone Authority in helping guide direction for not only the planning department, but the city overall. And so we do want to freshen up some of our kind of communication materials as part of the Renaissance Zone plan and, kind of celebrate that success. And so we see that as a work item. And then kind of capturing the robust data that talks a little bit more about the success of the Renaissance Zone program. We would like to work with you on some improved scoring and staff review, staff updates, or staff reports, if you will. And so we have a few ideas that we'd like to float your way and see how you like those. And then working with our Downtown INFOCUS plan, our EPA Brownfields grant program, continue to work with you on some creative ideas for the underdeveloped properties in downtown. And there's a ton of opportunity, as you know, and we'll be working with Jim Gilmore's office as well as along the riverfront, kind of those gateways as we go in and out of downtown, those kind of details. And I know that were part of the initial vision of the downtown plan back 20 years ago. We see continued opportunities to continue to work on those.
With all the work that you do on this every day, thinking of the A1, the A2, the C areas, do you feel that we have adequate blocks with keeping 2 in reserve and, looking at your crystal ball, what is your prediction for, do we need to start thinking legislatively for a change?
I do think we should think about some of those bigger strategies on how we talk about those, and Jim might have some other comments he wants to make in that level. But yeah, I would agree that we have so, and there's some blocks that are just almost complete, and so we really need to, kind of talk to those property owners who are maybe are not doing anything, and really, or they might be small parcels. And so we might want to think of, a deeper dive into some of those blocks as well.
Thank you.
So that concludes my presentation. I do have a motion but if you're not ready to act, we certainly understand.
Given the timeline, I would entertain a motion for approval of the zone development plan.
Madam Chair, I'd move that we approve the development plan and forward it to the City Commission.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. You get to toss the coin. And I think this has been so thorough that I don't have any further questions. So is there any further discussion? If none, we don't need a roll call vote for this.
Probably be helpful at this time.
Okay, roll call, please.
Capcorn,
Aye.
Lucho, Furnace,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Rashani,
Yes.
Mathern.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, we had.
Chair, before you move on, I just would like to
Thank you, Drew.
say this is really a great project and great information. This really illustrates how we've gone in 20 years or so, 30 years. So thanks.
Good work.
Thanks for the work, yeah.
And we like the screensaver too. Any other business or public comments today? If none, our next meeting is November 27th. Do we see that we'll have items for the agenda?
Probably not, and I think with the Thanksgiving holiday, but maybe I'll look to staff to see if they've talked to any applicants recently, so at this point in time. And I would just like to put in a plug for the Main Street Summit that is next week at the, there's a lot of economic development topics as part of that's a 4-day conference, or 3-day conference, and so I just wanted to put in a plug for that.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, the meeting is adjourned.